A pair of lions and two clashing civilizations form the enigma of more than 2 millennia ago, an enigma that remains unsolved to this day. From researchers to Herodotus himself, everyone has their theories, and it is debates like these that make history, archaeology, and myths so fascinating. Join me to see what mysteries we will be tackling this time. This discovery is nothing without its history, so let's put it in context. Greek tradition held that the Phrygians originally lived in Europe and were known as Phrygians before crossing into Anatolia. Herodotus recounts that the Macedonians called them Phrygians while they lived in Europe, and that, after migrating to Asia, they came to be called Phrygians. Archaeology and linguistics make it quite plausible that some population movement occurred from the Balkans to Anatolia during the Great Transformations at the end of the Bronze Age. The Phrygians appeared in Anatolia during the 12th or 11th century BC, in the same period of enormous instability that followed the collapse of the Great Bronze Age kingdoms. And here's something we must emphasize. The Phrygians spoke an Indo-European language. That is to say, they were a white people. Current linguistic evidence places Phrygian very close to Greek, to the point that some specialists consider them to form a subgroup within Indo-European. This is key if you're interested in history, since many tend to oversimplify Anatolia as a land exclusively inhabited by people from the east. Now let's talk about the archaeological findings. North of Afyon-Karahisar, in western Anatolia, there is an 11-meter-high volcanic tuff rock carved with two facing lions, their jaws open in a roar that has been petrified since the 8th century BC. The Turks call it Aslantaş, the lion stone, and it is one of the oldest and most imposing funerary monuments left by the Phrygians, the people who for centuries shared the spotlight with the Greeks, Lydians, and Persians in the heart of Asia Minor. The monolith is located in the Phrygian Valley, also known as the Phrygian Valley. The stone block, flattened on its two sides and front, houses the burial chamber halfway up, flanked by the two large lions. Between the paws of each lion is a carved cub, now heavily eroded and almost impossible to distinguish with the naked eye. And the top of the rock retains steps that were probably used for ceremonies in front of the tomb. But the discoveries don't end there. About 70 meters to the west stands its twin monument, Aslantaş, the snake stone. The name is a misunderstanding that has stuck in popular memory. The original facade, much larger and more ornate than that of Aslantaş, broke into pieces, probably due to an earthquake, and the local farmers, seeing the lion's detached claws scattered on the ground, mistook them for snake heads, hence the name, which has little to do with what the monument actually represented. The dating of Aslantaş is not yet settled. The highly decorated facade would suggest a later date within the Phrygian tradition, as this type of ornamentation usually appears on more recent monuments. However, the small size of the entrance, the flat roof of the burial chamber, in contrast to the pointed roofs typical of later Phrygian tombs, and the absence of rock-cut burial beds, point in the opposite direction towards an earlier date. Added to this is a more fundamental debate: to whom Aslantaş truly belongs. Although it is almost always included in catalogs of Phrygian funerary art, some specialists have pointed out that certain features of the monument do not fit well with the local typology. The Turkish researcher Şahin argued that the monument could actually be of Hittite origin, dating from after the fall of the Hittite Empire, but before the full development of Phrygian culture, or perhaps the work of a local ruler still under Hittite influence. If you know very little about the Hittites, or you'd like to delve deeper, I've included a video about this civilization in the comments. According to this interpretation, the placement of the lions flanking the entrance suggests a Hittite rather than a Phrygian iconographic tradition, and the absence of the geometric decorations and inscriptions found on other Phrygian monuments in the area reinforces this hypothesis. Furthermore, the burial chamber is unusually small by later Phrygian standards, and the triangular pediment typical of classical Phrygian facades is nowhere to be seen. The debate continues to this day between those who see Aslantaş as a purely Phrygian work and those who prefer to place it in that cultural border zone between the declining Hittite world and the emerging Phrygian world. To understand why this people, the Phrygians, aroused so much curiosity among the ancients, we must return to Herodotus. The Greek historian, in the second book of his histories, recounts an anecdote that has become one of the most cited experiments in ancient history, although today we would consider it more of a curious legend than a rigorous experiment. According to Herodotus, before the reign of Pharaoh Psammetichus I in the 7th century BC, the Egyptians considered themselves the oldest people on earth. Psammetichus, wanting to settle the matter, devised a test. He gave 2 newborns to a shepherd with orders to raise them among his flocks, without anyone uttering a single word in their presence, to see what would be the first word that would come out of their mouths on its own. 2 years later, the shepherd recounted that the children, upon seeing him arrive, would extend their hands and repeatedly utter the word bekos, which turned out to be the Phrygian word for bread. He concluded that Phrygian was the natural and innate language of humankind, and that therefore the Phrygians were an even older people than the Egyptians. Herodotus, as is often the case with many anecdotes from antiquity, is the only source that records the story, and there is no independent Egyptian record of the episode. But regardless of its veracity, the anecdote makes one thing clear. For the Greeks of the 5th century BC, Phrygia was not just any peripheral region, but a people to whom an almost mythical antiquity was attributed, associated with primordial wisdom and the very origin of human language. This legendary Phrygia is also the land of King Midas, the land of the goddess Cybele, the great mother of the mountains, whose cult had some of its most important rock-cut sanctuaries in this valley, such as nearby Maltaş, and the land of a kingdom that, after the fall of the Hittite Empire around 1200 BC, came to dominate much of central Anatolia until the Sumerians razed its capital, Gordion. Aslantaş and Aslantaş were built precisely during this period of splendor, when the Phrygians developed one of the most unique traditions of rock-cut architecture in the eastern Mediterranean. Monumental facades carved directly into the rock, with hardly any usable interior space, conceived not so much as dwellings for the dead, but as ceremonial facades, visible from afar, designed to proclaim the power of the one who lay within. It is not known for certain to whom the tomb at Aslantaş belonged. Its monumental scale, comparable to that of nearby Arslankaya or the great monument of Midas at Yazilikaya, suggests that it was dedicated to a member of the local nobility, perhaps a ruler of some rank within the Phrygian hierarchy. But no inscription preserved on the monument itself confirms its identity. The Phrygian Valley, declared a themed cultural route in 2013 under the name Phrygian Way, now attracts both archaeologists and hikers who explore its more than 500 kilometers of trails. And not only them, the deep chariot ruts that crisscross some sections of the region's rock, whose exact dating has not been precisely established, have fueled more extravagant theories about supposed lost civilizations or extraterrestrial interventions, a type of speculation that no serious geological study supports, but which continues to circulate among those who prefer mystery to the prosaic explanation of centuries of chariot traffic over soft, easily erodible tuff. In contrast to these interpretations, what remains solid at Aslantaş is what it has always been, an 11-meter-high tuff mass, 2 rampant lions that have guarded an almost empty chamber for 27 centuries, and a debate that no definitive discovery has yet settled. Is it of Phrygian origin or of Hittite influence?